Hello, welcome back to Laser Cut and Fly RC Models. I'm the Laser Model Guy. What I want to do today is I'm going to start to build one of the most famous aircraft in history, which is the Spitfire. So I'm going to start by downloading a plan from the internet, and I'll show you how I do that. And then I'm going to put that plan straight onto Lightburn, make up all the components on Lightburn, and then once that's all done, I will then be sending the lot across to the laser. We'll cut out the components and I'll show you how we build the aircraft. Once that's done, we'll fit it with a motor, electronics, radio control. We'll take it out and we'll fly the Spitfire. Let's go. Okay, so we come to outer zone and we're going to put in Spitfire, and what we'll find is there's a lot of plans for the Spitfire, but I've already had a look through these, and I've already picked one that I want to do. It's a 46-inch wingspan plane, and the number is 6169. This is it here. So all we do is we click on plan details, then we scroll down to the plan file and we click on that, and that will come straight into our downloads. It's automatically opened, but that's fine. If we just close that and then we now go to the file where we want it, we can search for our downloads and then we can bring it into that file. And so here it is. We've got our Spitfire. It's the 46-inch and it's the Oz 6169. If we open that now, we can see what we've got. So this is the main fuselage. We've got fuselage formers up here along the top. We've got a side view and a plan view, and then if we scroll down, we've got another sheet which has got the wing profile, the shapes over here for the typical wing rib. We've also got down the bottom here, we've got shapes for our the flat bit in the center of the wing, and then the I suppose it's a polyhedral, but we'll call it a dihedral because there's just a centerpiece with two wings going up. So so those shapes are there for us to cut out. And so what we'll do is we'll start work, I think, on the fuselage to begin with. So we open Lightburn, and next thing we need to do is bring our plan into Lightburn. Now what I'm going to do is bring the whole plan in, and I'm going to put it over to one side here, and then I'm going to work from that and bring shapes that we create into our workspace here, which will be the workspace for the SculptFun S9, or our laser cutter. So go to File, and then we just import, and then we will search. We'll browse our computer till we find the file where we've got our plan, and then we will click on the plan and import it in. So here we are with all of our files for all of our aircraft. So if we click on Spitfire, go into plan and Lightburn files, which is where we've stored it. It's a folder we made ourselves, and all I'm going to do is click on that. Now it says the file we're trying to load is a multi-page document. Which page do we want to load? So we'll go with page 1, and there we have our Spitfire plan. Now you can see it's considerably bigger than our workspace. So what I'll do is I'll just move that up to here, because we can bring in page 2 as well, just in case we need to refer across at any time. While we're doing the fuselage, we might want to look at how the wing's going to shape and fit underneath, and then when we're doing the wings we will perhaps want to look back at how the fuselage will look. So back again, we'll import again, so file, import, and this time we will have page 2. And there it is. So we put page 2 just below page 1, and all we're going to do is we're going to work in any space that we want around here, but once we've got our components made up, then we'll move them into our workspace. Now this workspace is 420 by 400 millimeters, so you can see the scale of our plan here. So if we've got any large pieces that need cutting out, which is the length of the fuselage, clearly we won't be able to cut them out in one piece. We'll have to make adjustments and work that out when we come to it, but we'll go through all of that step by step. Okay, one of the first things that we need to look at on this plan is that looking at the fuselage itself, this fuselage is built around a keel, and if you have a look, if we scroll right in, you can see this dotted line just inside that goes all the way around. That is the keel, and what the keel is, if you look up here, you can see it's in dotted lines along the plan view. What the keel is, it's a big center sheet that has the full profile of the aircraft or the fuselage, and then either side of that keel you've got these formers which go down the length. You can see they're all marked going down the length of the fuselage to give it its three-dimensional shape. So what we want to look at first is producing a flat keel or a flat outline shape of this fuselage. Now if you look just here, it says hollow keel as shown. In other words, it's not just a flat sheet of balsa, it's actually hollowed out there. Now what we'll be doing is we'll be taking this a little further. I'll be making an outline of the keel so that we can then put these formers on the outside. So what I'll be doing is making a series of pieces that will fit on our workspace, that will join together and form this center part of the aircraft. Okay, so that's the first thing we'll get on with. Now if you just have a look here, you can see the tail plane or the horizontal stabilizer is just a solid piece of balsa, and it slots into this keel. So if we just come down to our second sheet here, this is the tail plane here. And so what we'll do with this is we'll cut this out of a single piece, or this part out of a single piece, and I'll leave the center section flat, and we'll sand down the outside of that center section so that we get the profile, the profile of the of the tail plane. So by doing that, what that means is when we come to produce this keel here, all we need to do is produce a flat slot in there rather than this profiled slot, and what that will do is that will allow us to just push the tail plane in, and it'll fit really nicely. Okay, so let's get on with doing that then. So to make this keel, all I'm going to do is trace this outline all the way round, drop in here, and then all the way around the outside down to this point, and then back under, and then up here, because the keel, as you can see, finishes just there. So then the rest from that point forward will be where our motor sits. Now having said that, I think we would be better off extending the keel forward to the point where our electric motor will sit, because obviously this is designed to fit an old internal combustion engine, one of the glow motors, or perhaps a diesel, and so our motor will be much shorter. So I'm going to bring the keel further down until you know, so that our motor will sit here and the propeller will still be in the right place, the spinner will still be in the right place. Okay, so with that said, let's trace this outline and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Now our motor is 30mm long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just measure 30mm from there, and I'm going to just mark that off. Now I'll show you how I'll do that. All I'm going to do is create a rectangle, and we'll do that in a different colour. I think we'll do that in blue so that it stands out. And then if I make the width of that 30mm, just like that, I can now bring that down, and if I just line that up with the end of the aircraft there, I know that now this bulkhead here, I need another one just here. So I'm going to make my keel that size, and then I'm going to produce an additional bulkhead here to mount the motor on. Okay, so all I'm going to do this, and if I use the line tool, and I'm going to use a different colour again so that it stands out against what we're doing, all I need to do then is start to follow around the outside of the shape of the aircraft. Now you'll notice I'm not following the dotted line, which is the normal keel. I'm following the outer line, and there's a reason for this. The original plan calls for planking all the way around the outside. You can see it just here. It's said just here. Entire fuselage is planked with 1/8 by 3/8 balsa. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use longerons and stringers, so I'm going to be covering this with aura cover rather than planking it with balsa. So keep following round, and then what we will do with these later is we will make these all into smooth curve nodes, all of these points, and then that will blend in nicely, except for these here. I'm going to keep this straight because I'm going to be mounting the fin or the vertical stabilizer on top of that. So if I come to bottom there, and then just keep following this round. Now when we reach this point here, we are going to be coming over the wing, so we've got to make that shape here so we can fit the wing underneath our keel. And we will verify that shape later. We will when we make the shape of our wing formers or our wing ribs. There we go. That's the outer shape of the aircraft now. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to just bring that over to one side, that shape. I'm just going to bring that to there, and that's going to be our outline. So if I just zoom in on that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that to nodes, and then each of these nodes in the center, I'm going to hover over those and I'm going to convert that to a smooth curve node just by pressing S, and then what that will do is that will blend our shapes in. That just needs to go up slightly, so got to make sure that these remain smooth, and there may be some adjustment to be done. So just pressing Control over that node, select that node, press Control, and then the Shift arrow keys to just blend that slightly. There we go. Okay, next we'll come to this one, hover over that and press S, and then this one, press S, and you can see the difference between a corner node and a smooth curve node. The corner nodes are square, you can see this one is square, and you can see the smooth curve nodes are round. So that's the difference. Now these here I'm leaving as corner nodes because I want that to be absolutely flat and straight, as I want this to be flat and straight. So I'll come to this one and convert that to a smooth curve node. And the same with this one, and then the same with each of these. And this one here, and there we go. So I think that when we come off that now, we'll find that we have got a nice profile of the Spitfire. Now if I use this offset tool, the offset shape tool, and I click on that and I come inwards, and I would say probably maybe 15 millimeters. So 15 millimeters, and what that gives us is a 15 millimeter shape all the way round, and this is going to be cut out of 8 millimeter balsa, so it's going to be nice and thick and sturdy, and that will give us our outer shape for our aircraft. And the reason I've hollowed this out is because we're going to have our electronics inside the aircraft. Okay, so all we need to do with this is cut it into shapes that will fit into our workspace, and we'll be able to then lay that out and cut out the keel. So to cut the outline that we've created into small sections, what we'll do is we will use our line tool, and then all we'll do is we will, making sure that we cross the line completely, we will just put our lines down like that, and then if we make a copy of the whole thing, just like that, press Control C, Control V. What we've got now is a copy, and if we go to our snipping tool, all we need to do is snip away the bits that we don't want, and we're now left with our end piece, which will be just like that. And what we can do is we can now label this up as, go to our label, and we'll reduce the size of this, I think, to 5 millimeters, and we'll just write that in as, in fact we'll go down to 4 millimeters, I think, and we'll just label this as keel K1, or K1, keel 1, and that will be our first component of the keel. So what I'll do very quickly is I'll change the outside of that to a cut-in layer, and I'll change the text to our engraving layer, which is going to be the blue layer later, and I can bring that onto our workspace just down here, and then just lie that flat, and what we'll do is we'll put that down here somewhere. Whoops. If you do find that you do something like that, what I've done here is I've dragged the shape without taking the letter in. If you press Ctrl Z, you'll go back to where you were. So what I need to do with this is just group that shape. So that's now a completed part of our keel. If I want to get this flat and horizontal, all I need to do is, say if it was at a slight angle, all I need to do is go to nodes, hover over one of the edges and press A, and that will align it. So that's now aligned to the horizontal, and I can now put that onto our workspace wherever I want to, and I'll arrange everything else the same. Now the last thing that I want to do with this is, or the next thing I want to do, and I'll be doing this to all of the shapes that we make, is I want to put in some tabs so that when I cut it out on the laser it doesn't fall apart. And all I'll do, put a little tab there and a little tab there. Now, in case you're wondering what those tabs do, they will leave a 0.5 millimeter gap in the laser cut, and if we go to preview you'll be able to see that. So if we scroll in, you can see there's a little gap now, and there's a little gap there, just there and there, and so that will mean that when we pick up our sheet of balsa later, when all of our components are cut out, everything doesn't fall out. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm going to do exactly the same process with each of these all the way around the shape, but before I do that, let's just have a look at what we can actually fit onto our workspace. So we're going to have to cut the top section as well as the bottom sections, etc. So if we go to our line tool, now what I want to do this time is I want to make the line quite long, and at a very shallow angle, so that we get a nice long length of the component to stick together. So I think that should do that. Okay, and so we'll call this move that along a little bit. Okay, and we'll call this one K2, and then K3, K4, and we'll just keep going around creating this shape. So I'll just make another copy. And then all I'm going to do is use my snipping tool to remove everything I don't want from there. And I'm left with K2. So if I do the same process, if I just level this up, I think, go to nodes, click on there, hover over this one, press A, and that's leveled us up. Come off nodes, and we will call that K2. Keel 2. Make the outside our cutting layer, the text our engraving layer. We'll group,
and we'll put our tabs in. And that's our component completed, and that's K2. What I'll do now is I will very quickly go around the shape, and I'll be, every time there's a change in direction like this, that will be a separate component. So I'll make a component there which will join with a component here and there, and then I'll make this into the largest components I can, make the end, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. Okay, so this is the completed shape here with all the cutting lines on, and these are all the components that I've made up, which when fastened together will create the keel. I've brought the nose forward, as you remember, so our bulkhead we will make where we've got these sections here, we will have another bulkhead just here on this blue line, which we'll make up, and in that I will put the holes to mount the motor, and I'll show you what that looks like when we come to put it together. Okay, so what I've got here now is I've got all of the components on this shape here, all represented, but I've made a change to the back. Remember we spoke about the rear or the tail plane that has to slot in at the back. So where we had the small shape here, what I've done is I've gone into nodes and I've brought it down, and I've made it into I brought it down from the top, I've made it into a larger shape, and then I've cut in a slot here, 7mm wide slot, because that's the material that I'm going to use. And the way I did that was I just made a rectangle. When this was a solid piece, I made a rectangle that was 7mm high, and I overlapped that to where the wing would be, and then I used the snipping tool to cut that slot out. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to overlay this onto the aircraft itself, or onto the plan itself, and I'll then talk through what I've done here. Each of these blue lines is one of these formers up here. So each of these formers is represented on the plan, and what I've done is I've put a blue line where those formers are, and the reason I've done that is so that when I come to make the formers, I'll be able to line them up on this plan and put them in exactly the right place so that I can do any fine adjustments. But I'll show you what I mean, or I'll show you how I'm going to go about that later. Let me just put this back onto the plan. Okay, so what you can see now is, if we just scroll in here, you can see that the slot in the tail end is exactly where the tail plane will be, and each of these blue lines, you can see one there, and that's just below where former H will be. There's another one here which is where former I will be, and what I've done with these blue lines is I've put them on the front edge of each of these formers, so you can see the former would sit there, and so the blue line is at the front edge of that. Okay, so what this means now is that I can start to make these formers, and I've got a map here which will be over to one side, which will help me with shaping them up, and I'll show you how I do that in just a minute. Now these little shapes here, what I've got is nose side, so N and a small s, NS, and this is nose on the other side. So if we come up to here, they are going to be what sits either side of the motor and gives us the space for our front, the very front of our fuselage, where the motor will protrude out and the spinner will sit. So I'll just move those over there. I just wanted to show you those before I move them away, and I did those in exactly the same way as I did the outline. I just went to a line and then drew round, I put a node in the middle, made that into a smooth curve node, and that's how we did that. So with all that said, I'm going to now move this out, and I'm going to use that now as a plan when we start to make up these components. And we'll start with component B, just here. And all we're going to do is produce this with our line tool. Now our keel will be in there, so we've got to allow for that. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to just come round like this, oops, I'll correct that in just 1 second. Now if I just convert this to a different colour, now what we'll be able to do is go to nodes, and I'll be able to bring those nodes in. Now I'm going to go to the outside of this line, but I need to bring that in to there because that is where the keel will be sitting, and I'll go to the inside of that keel, which would be the outside of this shape, so to speak. Select this node, we can bring that to the outside, and then select this node, bring that to the outside, and just follow that process round. Just follow the process round until all of the nodes are on the outside of the line, and this node here will just join those together, snap those together just like that. Okay, so what we've got now is we've now got former B made. Now there's a couple of things to note here. One is these formers are designed to have planking all around the outside, which we're not going to do, so we may just have to alter the size of these formers once we've fully created them. So all I'm going to do now is change each of these into a smooth curve node by hover over it, press S, and then when we come off there, you can see that that is now a perfect shape. If we just go back to nodes and just have a little look at this, there we go. Just straighten up that corner node in the at the top there, and if we come back there and then we bring that over, you'll see that that is now a perfect copy, or more or less. So if we just bring this down and we put it over our plan, what you'll find is that it more or less sits on the inside of these of where the planks are going to be. So we need it to be a little bit bigger than that. Now the planks were going to be 1/8 balsa, which is 3.2 millimeters. So if we increase the height here by 6 millimeters, so 123 millimeters there. So if we take that to 129 millimeters, 129, what you'll find is we're now at the correct size for our for our plan. Now the other thing is the width as well is going to change, but that's only going to change by 3mm, because obviously there's another side to this. We'll need to make 2 of these, so that needs to be 3mm wider than it is. So if I just change that one number there to 43.192, that will now be the correct size for our former. So the B former is the one that is right at the front here of our wing shape. So if we press Control and Shift, we can just move that into place, just like that. Okay, so that former is now going to be exactly the right size for our components. So what I'd like to do now is I'm just going to come inside here, and I'm going to put a shape, add a shape to this. And the way I want to do this, the thickness of that shape, I'm going to make that half the thickness of the keel. Now the wood I'm going to use for the keel is 6mm, well, it's 6.5mm thick. So what I want to do is I want to make the width of this 3mm of this strip here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that over to join our original shape, or the shape of our former, because what I want to do is have on the inside of our former, I want there to be a small ridge or a protrusion that will fit inside of our keel. Okay, so if I just bring that down to here, both together, and then what I can do is I can just make sure that by pressing Shift and Control and then the right arrow key, I can just bring that over until it's just touching our component. And then if I stretch that so that it comes inside, so I haven't moved this outer edge at all, I've just stretched it to come inside, I can now use the snipping tool to take away the bits that we don't want, just like that. So our former will now sit in inside our keel, and it'll just press into place, and that will make a really good strong connection there. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is along the side of our fuselage, the full length of the fuselage, I want to run a longer run straight down there. Now all that will be is 1/8 by 1/8 balsa, so it's just going to be a piece of square section balsa that runs the length of the aircraft. So what I need to do is along this line that I've drawn, this center line, I'm going to put a square cut right in there, and the way I'm going to do that is just make a small square, and that's going to be 3.2 by 3.2, and then what I'm going to do is bring that down and I'm going to get it right on the centre and then rotate it so that it's at the correct angle. Just like that. Just move that into place, and now if I just stretch that a tiny bit, I don't want to distort it, and then if we get our snipping tool we can just snip away these parts, and we've now got the first of our grooves for our longerons and our stringers. Okay, so what we will do later on is I'll put a couple more of these lines along, and I'll add in additional slots for further stringers to go in later. But what I want to do now is just make the next component up so that you get the idea of how we're going to do that. So we'll make up component C. Now this, you can see this has got a flat bottom because it's going to sit on the wing. So if we go to our line tool, and all I want to do is just the same as before. So let's just move all of these into place again. I'll join that one up to there, and then just to bring that in more precisely, I'll press Control and Shift and my down arrow. I'll just select that. I'll bring it down to the edge there. That one there is on the outer edge, which is good. This one here just needs to come across a bit. So again, Control and Shift, a couple of clicks, and in we come. Come straight across here. And we can then go to nodes and do exactly the same thing, change all of these to smooth curve nodes by hover over, press S, and then when we come off there, we have a look. Seems to be a little bit of a wobble here. It looks like we've come inside a bit. We go back to nodes and we'll correct that. There, that looks much better. Okay, so once again, we are going to be a little undersized, but it won't be 6mm this time, because on that bottom edge there's no planking, but we've got the wing sitting here. So this, at this point here, right on this line here, this has to come down to this bottom, to the bottom of this shape here. We want that corner there to sit on the wing, which will be sat underneath. So there we go. That will be absolutely perfect right there. Now the width we need to increase again by 3mm, just like we did before. So the width, we can just alter that number there to 3, and there we are. Okay, we'll bring our 3.2mm square across. In fact, we may as well make a few copies of these, I think. Because we're going to need one at each of these points. There we go. And we will be adding more later as well. So okay, so at the centre, right on that line there, now all we need to do is just ease that across without distorting it too much, and then get our snipping tool and just snip these bits out. And we've now got our next former. What I'm going to do now is I'll carry on with the rest of the formers and I'll show you what they all look like when they're completed. Okay, so most of these formers are done now. With these front formers, which were originally solid, I'll just show you that. There, see, they're solid. They'll join each other in the centre. What I've done with those is I got an ellipse, and all I did was overlapped the former, and then I snipped it away so that we'll end up, when the two formers come together either side, we'll end up with a hole for any cables or battery lines to go through, so that so we can connect up our motor. So I'll just delete that. Now all the formers are nearly done. I've just got the last one to do, and because these are a different shape, I'll just show you how I do this one. Very simple. Go to lines, and then very quickly just go around the outside. Don't need to be too accurate just now, because we're going to go to nodes and we're going to fine tune this. So we just need to get enough points all around the outside of the shape, and then we'll be able to work with that. So come back to this start point, and there we go. So we then go to nodes, and then all we're going to do is select our shape, and then if we just highlight that node and then Control and Shift, and then we can just move that in until it's exactly in the right place. We want it on the outside of the line, and then we highlight that one and do exactly the same. Whoops. So highlight the next one and then bring it in until it is just on that line. And we just keep going round the shape. And it's the outside shape that's most crucial, because that will be forming the shape of our fuselage. But we want to do the same with the inside of this shape as well. That one looks about the right place to me. Just very quickly. Okay, and this corner, bring that out to where it's supposed to be. And this one here, miles out. Very simple, bring it back into place. And you can see, even if you can't see the node against the background, what you can see is you can see the change of direction of the line. So all you need to do is grab the shape, grab that area, whoops, and you'll be able to grab the node that way. Okay, so that's the all the nodes moved onto the outside of the line. So if we then just grab that shape and drag it out to where we want it, and then go back to nodes, and then all we're going to do is hover over each one and press S, turn it into a smooth curve node, And then what you find when we've done this is we'll have this really nice shape. Got one that's a little bit out there, so if we just move that node, there you go, and that makes it a much nicer shape. So if we come off that, you can see how that's now formed into a shape. Now these rectangles here, because they were made as a rectangle, what we do know about them is that they are absolutely vertical and they're also absolutely straight. So if we then bring this across and just line it up on this shape, so what we can do is just grab our shape and snap it into place on that line. And then if we go to nodes, what we can do is we can just make sure that these nodes are exactly in the right place. There we go. These down here, I'm just going to move these over slightly, and the reason I'm doing this is because when we lay it on our keel, we now know that that is going to be absolutely perfectly flat and it will sit nicely on that keel. So if I bring that down, line it up on its space, and you can move the whole shape now. Because we've selected that shape, if we control and shift, you can move that whole shape 1/10 of a millimetre at a time. So we line it up on our blue line. Now bear in mind that we still have to expand the height of this by 6 millimetres. The 3 millimetres for the planking that would have been on the outside of the plane at the top, 3 millimetres for the planking that would have been on the outside at the bottom. So what we do is our height is 107.5. So if we add 6 onto that, this needs to go to 113.5. 113.5. And then when we fit that in, we'll see that we're very, very close to being exactly the right size. Maybe take a little bit off the bottom there, 0.5 millimetre maybe. Okay, and then of course the width needs to be expanded by 3 millimetres, so that becomes 25.136. And now we know that we've got our proper size for the model that we're making here. Okay, and there's now the next thing to do is we're going to make that little key just here so that it sits in, see, just like this one, so that it sits in between our two pieces of keel. So all I'll do is bring this down. This is 3 millimetres wide. So I'll just make a small piece and then I'll bring it up to here. And all I'm going to do with that is I'm going to use Control and Shift, and I'm going to bring that up until it just touches this line here, so that will be inside of the keel, and then I'm going to bring that up level, and then if I just copy that, Control C and then Control V, I can do the same at the bottom. Now what we see here at the bottom, our form is quite thin at the bottom, so what I'm going to do is just bring this up, extend it up a bit. So all we'll do is I'll put that where we want it, which will be right in line with our bottom of our former. Now you see these blue lines, remember we just put them in freehand and I haven't corrected those to be perfectly upright, so so I'm not too concerned that it's a little bit out to the bottom. Now if we just go to our main former, go to nodes, and all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to move this node directly up to about there. We can just delete this node, I think. So select that node, press D. There we go. Slightly deeper bottom part of our former. And so if I just bring this down so it's level, and then all I'm going to do is just stretch that in slightly, and then press Control, so that's selected. Select our main former, select the bit at the top, and what we can do with that is just bring it out of there, and then if we just stretch this one so it comes inside, and then go to our snipping tool and we can remove those two bits. Do the same there, and we've now got that key, so that will now fit nicely in between our two parts of our keel. So we drop that down and we'll put it into place by using Control Shift and just put it there, and then we can take the square that we made earlier and we'll drop that down. Now these snap into place on the line, so that's now, you know that that's centered on the line, because when you get close it just snaps into place. There you go, so that is centered on the line. So all I need to do is bring that across, and then if I just rotate it so that it becomes flat to that surface, then what I can do is just stretch that a tiny amount without moving any of this inside. Get our snipping tool and just snip away those pieces, and that's that completed. Okay, so the next one is just in two parts, exactly the same. So I'll just go ahead and make that, and then I'll show you the next step once that's done. Okay, so we've now got all of our formers made up for the main body of the plane, but what is clear is that we're going to need more than just this one notch, because we're going to have stringers running along, because remember we're covering this with aura cover rather than using planking, which was what they were going to use. They were going to use, or the original plan says planking 1/8 by 3/8 strips covering the whole aircraft. So the way I want to do this, we're going to have to work out how to put these notches in and make sure that they all line up in a straight line. Now if you look at the curvature of the different formers and then you look at the shape at the bottom, clearly we can't use straight lines like we have done for the center one, because those lines will be, first of all, at different angles, but also the curvature will vary in different places along the length. And then here, of course, going over the wing, there won't be a curvature because it ends up flat, so there'll be no curved underside. So the way I'm thinking we should do this is, if I take a straight line just like that, and then if I go to nodes and I make that line perfectly vertical just by hovering over it and pressing A in nodes, if I come off that now and if I go to this tool here, which will create a circular array of this line. Now what I've done is I've set this to 24 copies just by altering that number there, and now if I press OK, what we'll find is I've got 24 copies of this line. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then another 12 round there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to make sure that all of our notches are in the correct place, and I'll show you how I do that in just 1 minute. What I don't think I want, if I just take this one side of this circular array, what I don't want is that many notches, that many stringers going the length of the aircraft. But at the top where the curve is and at the bottom where the sharpest curve is, I will want probably 2 right there. The center one, that's going to be our keel. So if I take 2 and then take this next one and then just delete that, and then take this next one and delete that, and then come down, take this next one, delete, and then this one here. I think that number of stringers will be about right. So I'm going to group that. Now what I'm going to do is just bring this over and I'm going to align this so that our center line there, so this center line is on this line here, right on the center. And then what we'll find is if we I want to align this line here with the edge of our new shape. So just bring that in, just like that. And then if I take both of these shapes away, so I've selected the former, and now if I press Control and select our new shape, I can come across here, bring both of those out, and this now tells me where I want to put my new notches for our stringers. So if I create a shape, and we'll make that red, and then if I make that 3.2 by 3.2, and what I've got now is I've got one square here, it's 3.2 by 3.2. So if I bring that across, I'll just line that up there. If I Control and copy and then Control V, and just make a copy of that next to each of my lines, what I can now do is I can put these straight onto the line. That'll snap to the center there as it has done. Then I can rotate and then bring this down that center line to there. And then if I just stretch that a tiny amount, I can then get my snipping tool, snip away these 2 bits, and then do the same, whoops, and then do the same here, snap to the center, rotate it round, bring it down, and then just stretch that a tiny bit. And this does only want to be a tiny bit stretched because you see, because we've changed the angle now, if we stretch it more, it actually distorts the shape. So we want the smallest amount. Get our snipping tool, snip those components out or those parts out, and then we'll just carry on doing the same, and I'll show you what that looks like in just 1 second. Okay, so that is our component now completely made up, and you can see we've got more stringers on the tighter part of the curve at the top, and then again at the bottom. And now if we use that same pattern in exactly the same way on each of these formers, you'll find that when we come to assemble this, all of those stringers, all of the notches for the stringers will line up absolutely perfectly. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that with all of them, exactly that same process, just bringing that, making that center, taking this so that the edge is right on that line, then bring in control, bring them both across together just like that. Okay, so I will just very quickly cut these out, and I'll show you what they all look like when they're all completed in just 1 minute. Okay, so that's all of the formers made now for the side of the aircraft. So what I'm going to do is, I can just show you what they look like if I bring one away from there. So that's one of the formers, and of course there will be these will all be in pairs, so if I just copy that, there will be one that goes the other way, and they will sit like that with the keel sitting in between, and that's how the fuselage for the aircraft will be formed. So with that in mind, let me just get rid of that one, and I'll bring this one back and put it back in place. I'm going to stop this video there, and what I'll do in the next video is I'm going to produce the nose, and I'll be using a template that I made when I did the contester, and I'll be using the center of this template here, which is the motor mounting, and this will be made out of plywood, but I'll show you how I do that in the next video. We'll complete the nose and we'll work out what we have to do to make the transition down to the very point of the nose, or the very end of the nose where just the motor protrudes. Okay, so thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon with the next part of Spitfire.